So, James, let's begin with the Mail on Sunday, shall we?
Sure. And we saw the picture from the Mail's website there. Here's the headline you referred to, Bloodbath at BBC as Chief quits. This paper's not been a great advocate to the BBC, it has to be said. Very sensationalist tone. It says more people are tipped to go. This is going to make uncomfortable reading for some other management figures at the BBC. And what we know is that a gunman opened fire, 3 people were killed, 2 were wounded. It appears that the police got a call saying a man had opened fire on residents, that there were bodies lying on the ground. They dispatched armed officers, and there was some sort of shootout. The police... Dawn breaks in Gaza with further evidence of this continuing conflict. Overnight, a thunderous explosion lights up the sky. And in a residential neighbourhood in southern Gaza, chaotic scenes as emergency workers respond to the destruction of a 3-storey house. Back at court, the sporting icon known as the Blade Runner. Today, Oscar Pistorius could learn whether he'll be released on bail ahead of his trial for a Valentine's Day crime that stunned the world. During his first court appearance in Pretoria on Friday, he broke down in tears as he was accused of premeditated murder, a charge he denies. History in flames. Unverified amateur video appearing to show fire raging inside Aleppo's ancient market. Before Syria descended into violence, this had been a major tourist attraction. Well, I spoke to the solicitor who's the solicitor of the parents of this 9-month-old boy as he came out of the court. It's been quite a day, an emotional day for the parents. They actually left the appeal hearing as it was going on because they couldn't bear it any longer. They're so upset. And he told me that this is the end of the legal road for them. They'll have some reasons next week. But he intimated that the NHS Trust could withdraw treatment soon. And if that's so, this boy who has a rare metabolic condition, he has brain damage, he has respiratory failure, he relies on a ventilator. If that's switched off, he could die within weeks.
And he needs to stay here. He should stay here. That is justice. That's my message.
The Home Office says it can't comment on individual cases, but Al Bangura won't be deported while his appeal is being considered. The fans here have raised their voices in his support. They'll be hoping the Home Secretary Jackie Smith is listening. James Kelly, BBC News, Watford Football Club. In salons like this one in central London, people are taking full advantage of the latest in tanning technology. Here they follow the Sunbed Association's code of practice that says sunbeds shouldn't be used by children under the age of 16. But cancer charities and skin experts would like to see a UK-wide ban that would close the door on all under 18s. It was Gordon Brown who summed up the mood on a day when the rough and tumble of party politics was replaced by a palpable sense of shared grief.
Every child is precious and irreplaceable, and the death of a child is an unbearable sorrow that no parent should ever have to endure.
The Prime Minister is all too aware of that sorrow. His daughter Jennifer Jane died aged just 10 days old in 2002.
Politics can sometimes divide us, but there is a common human bond that unites us in sympathy and compassion at times of trial and in support for each other at times of grief.
And we take a break now from our normal programming and hand over to James Kelly for some important news.
It's just been announced that South Africa's first black president, Nelson Mandela, has died. Mr. Mandela, who was 95, had been suffering from a recurrence of a lung infection. He was admitted to hospital 3 times this year, but since September, he'd been receiving treatment at his home in Johannesburg. Mr. Mandela contracted tuberculosis during his 27 years in prison for leading the fight against apartheid in South Africa. He is revered as the father of the nation for overseeing the transition from white minority rule to democracy.
This is BBC Radio
6 Music.
And we start with some breaking news in the last half hour. Scotland's First Minister, Alex Salmond, who led the campaign for Scottish independence, has said he's resigning as leader of the Scottish National Party and will later step down as First Minister.
This is 5 Live.
Well, our reporter James Kelly's in Manchester city centre.
Our reporter James Kelly is outside Nottingham Jail for us. Our reporter James Kelly is in Sheffield.
Our reporter James Kelly is in Tewkesbury.
James Kelly is at the court in the capital Douglas.
James Kelly is at Warwickshire Police Headquarters.
First, let's get the latest from James Kelly.
James Kelly, our correspondent
correspondent there.
It's 3:09. As you heard earlier, a 17-year-old has been found guilty of murdering young footballer Kyan Prince. Kyan, who played for Queen's Park Rangers youth team, died after being stabbed outside the gates of his school in northwest London just over a year ago. Our reporter James Kelly is at the Old Bailey. James, just remind us about this case.
Well, you remember, Simon, this was quite a shocking case. Kyan Prince seemed to have a glittering future ahead of him. He was a member of the youth team for Queen's Park Rangers. He was described as a role model with leadership qualities, and he was a valued member of his school. But on May 18th last year, he left the school, the London Academy in Edgware in North London, and he intervened in a play fight between another youth and the defendant in this case, Hanad Hassan. Now, Hassan was in the year above him and was excluded from the academy, but was waiting about outside the school for a girl. Kyan intervened in a play fight that Hanad Hassan was having with another youth, and Hanad Hassan produced a knife, grabbed Kyan Prince in a headlock and plunged the knife into him twice, once in the arm and once in the heart, and it was that wound with a 5-centimetre penknife blade that proved fatal.
Our reporter James Kelly is here. What do you know, James?
Well, this is a breaking story in the last hour or so, and some of the details are a little sketchy, but it's been reported that 5 members of a British group were attacked by a polar bear during a trip in the far north of Norway.
James Kelly has been following the day's developments.
Glenn Mulcair is at the eye of a media storm that's grown ever more fierce and unpredictable with each new allegation, and one that shows no sign of abating. The private investigator told The Guardian that when he worked for the News of the World, there was a constant demand for results. He said he wanted to apologise to anybody who'd been hurt or upset by what he'd done.
Savage. The time now, 7:09. 4 members of a gang specialising in fake identities and documents were jailed yesterday. They ran their multi-million-pound operation from Spain. James Kelly's been following the story. And James, this was an operation that ran online. Tell us how it worked.
Well, this was a very sophisticated operation. How it worked was there was a website called Confidential Access. People could go to this website and basically get dossiers of information they could use to steal other people's identities. One of the people who was jailed yesterday, Jason Place, a 42-year-old from Kent, he was running the operation from a villa in Alicante in Spain. He had sourced information about Britons with good credit ratings, and these details were being used to create false documents. So basically they were taking information about
by years of conflict. James Kelly reports.
This latest humanitarian crisis to hit Darfur is the result of heavy fighting between 2 Arab tribes over gold deposits in the north of the region. The United Nations had previously reported 70,000 people had been displaced. It's now increased that estimate to 100,000.
Newsbeat's James Kelly has the latest.
Armed mobs and looters on the streets of Western City in Kenya. The country's been in the grip of violence since last week's disputed election result.
Newsbeat.